Red Bull just lost over 1 full second per lap, and the real reason is something no Formula One team should ever face. Their own wind tunnel is giving them the wrong answers. Because this isn't just a slow car. This is a car built on data that doesn't match reality. A system failure so deep, the engineers don't even know what's wrong. Max Verstappen called it impossible to drive. A rookie from their junior team knocked him out in qualifying. And the most dominant team in the sport is now being beaten by its own sister team. This is not a performance drop. This is a technical collapse. And what you're about to hear reveals how one hidden problem inside Red Bull's own tools triggered the most shocking disaster in modern Formula One. At first, Red Bull didn't think the problem was that serious. A few tenths, maybe. A setup issue. A balance problem. Something they could fix between sessions. Because that's what dominant teams do. They adjust. They refine. They recover. But this time, nothing worked. Session after session, the same pattern appeared. The car looked unstable. Unpredictable. Slow in places it should have been strong. And no matter what they changed, the lap time didn't come back. That's when the engineers started doing something unusual. They stopped looking at the setup and started questioning the data itself. Because when performance doesn't match expectations, there are only two possibilities. Either the car is wrong, or the model is. And at Red Bull, the model had always been perfect. For years, their wind tunnel and simulations gave them an edge. They didn't guess. They knew. They could predict performance before the car even touched the track. That's how dominance is built. But now, that certainty was gone. Because the RB22 was exposing something nobody wanted to admit. The car on track was not the car they designed. And that realization changes everything. Because if your data is wrong, every decision becomes a risk. Every upgrade becomes uncertain. Every fix might make things worse. And that's exactly what started happening. They brought updates, expected improvements, trusted the numbers. But when the drivers went out, the car didn't improve. Sometimes, it got worse. That's when frustration turned into confusion. Because now, they weren't just chasing performance. They were chasing understanding. Trying to figure out which version of the car was real. The one in the simulation. Or the one on the track. And that's the moment a Formula One team loses control. Because development depends on correlation. You test something. You predict the result. You confirm it on track. That loop has to work. But for Red Bull, that loop is broken. The wind tunnel says one thing. Reality says another. And the gap between those two is costing them an entire second per lap. And here's where it becomes even more serious. Because the wind tunnel isn't just slightly off. It's fundamentally limited. Built decades ago. Designed for a completely different era. A system that struggles with temperature stability. A system that cannot fully simulate modern ground effect aerodynamics. And in the 2026 regulations? That's critical. Because these cars depend on precision. Millimeters. Tiny airflow changes. Perfect correlation between simulation and reality. Without that, you're not developing a Formula One car. You're guessing. And Red Bull is now forced to do exactly that. Guess. And that's something they haven't had to do in years. Because while they're dealing with uncertainty, their rivals are not. Mercedes knows exactly what their upgrades will do. McLaren predicts gains with near-perfect accuracy. Ferrari builds on a stable foundation. Red Bull is trying to understand their own car. And that difference is everything. Because in Formula One, the fastest team is not just the one with the best car. It's the one that understands it the most. And right now, Red Bull doesn't. Not completely. Not consistently. And that's why this situation is so dangerous. Because this isn't just a performance issue. It's a structural problem. One that doesn't disappear with a single upgrade. One that affects every future decision. Every development step. Every race weekend. And that leads to one unavoidable conclusion. This isn't just a bad start to the season. It's a system failure. And fixing a system is much harder than fixing a car. But that's where the story takes another turn. Because once Red Bull realized this, they had to make a choice. A decision that could define their entire season. And this is where Red Bull made the decision that could either save them or finish their season. Because once they accepted the truth, that their wind tunnel couldn't be trusted, they had two options. Fix the system, or ignore it. Fixing it would take years. New infrastructure. New correlation models. A complete rebuild of how they develop the car. Impossible in the middle of a championship. So they chose the only path left. Trust the track. Not the simulation. Not the wind tunnel. Reality. And that changes everything. Because now, Red Bull is no longer developing like a top team. They're reacting, using real race data, driver feedback, what the car actually does, corner by corner, and building from that. But here's the risk. Track data is limited. You only get a few sessions, a few laps, a few conditions. That's not enough to fully understand a Formula One car. So now, every decision becomes more aggressive, more uncertain, more dangerous. And that's exactly what led to the biggest move of all. A complete overhaul of the RB22. Not small upgrades. Not minor adjustments. A full reset. New floor. New aerodynamic concept. Reworked suspension. Weight reduction across the chassis. Even changes to how the car manages airflow at different speeds. Everything at once. Because they don't have time to go step by step. They're already 1 second behind. And while they're rebuilding, everyone else is moving forward. So Red Bull has to take a shortcut, a massive leap, and hope it lands. But here's the problem. When you change everything at once, you lose clarity. If the car improves, you don't know why. If it gets worse, you don't know what failed. And that makes development even more unstable. But they had no choice. Because staying on the original path would guarantee failure. So they chose risk. Extreme risk. And inside the team, that decision didn't come easily. Because not everyone agrees. Some engineers believe the real issue is still the wind tunnel. That no matter what changes they make, they will always be limited until that is fixed. Others believe the concept itself is broken. That the RB22 was designed on wrong assumptions. And cannot be fully corrected this season. And that division is dangerous. Because in Formula One, unity creates speed. But doubt slows everything down. And right now, Red Bull is dealing with both. A car they don't fully understand. And a team that doesn't fully agree. And all of that pressure leads back to one man, Pierre Waché. Because this is his project, his direction, his decision. And right now, he's under more pressure than anyone in the paddock. Because this isn't just about performance anymore. It's about credibility. Because before the season, he believed the new regulations would solve their limitations. That starting from zero would eliminate the old problems. But the opposite happened. The problems didn't disappear. They got worse. And that's what makes this moment so critical. Because now, everything comes down to one test. One race. One answer. Miami. That's where this new version of the RB22 will finally appear. Built on track data. Not simulation. Built on reality. Not prediction. And for the first time, Red Bull will see if their new direction actually works. But here's the truth. Even inside the team, they don't expect a miracle. They expect a step. And that might not be enough. Because when you're 1 second behind, you don't need a step. You need a transformation. And that's what makes this so dangerous. Because if this gamble works, Red Bull comes back, they rebuild confidence. They find direction again. But if it fails, there is no second reset. No backup plan. No time left. Just one conclusion. That the problem was never just the car, it was the system behind it. And that's the kind of failure that doesn't disappear in one season. And this is where everything becomes irreversible. Because after Miami, there are no more experiments left. No more radical changes. No more second chances to rethink the car. Everything Red Bull believes in is already on that RB22. And that means one thing. From this point forward, they are no longer searching for solutions. They are living with the consequences. Because if this new direction doesn't work, then the problem goes deeper than anyone inside the team wants to admit. Deeper than weight. Deeper than balance. Deeper than aerodynamics. It means the entire foundation is wrong. And in Formula One, you cannot rebuild a foundation mid-season. You carry it, race after race, weekend after weekend, watching the gap stay the same or even grow. And that's the real danger now. Because even if Miami shows improvement, even if they gain half a second, they're still behind, still reacting, still chasing teams that understand their cars better. And that's the key difference. Because Mercedes doesn't guess. McLaren doesn't guess. Ferrari doesn't guess. They predict. They simulate. They arrive at the track already knowing what the car will do. Red Bull finds out in real time. Corner by corner. Lap by lap. And that delay is impossible to recover at this level. But here's where it becomes even more serious. Because this isn't just about the season. This affects the future. The next car. The next concept. The next era of regulations. Because if the correlation problem isn't solved, it doesn't disappear in 2027. It carries over. It grows. And suddenly, This isn't a bad year. It's the beginning of a decline. The kind that dominant teams fear the most. Because losing performance is one thing. Losing understanding is something else entirely. That's how eras end. Not with one bad race, but with confusion, with doubt, with a team no longer knowing why it was fast or how to get back there. And that's exactly where Red Bull is standing right now. At a crossroads. One path leads to recovery. Slow, difficult, but possible. The other leads deeper into uncertainty, where every upgrade feels like a guess. Every race feels unpredictable. And every decision carries more risk than the last. And at the center of that crossroads is Pierre Waché. Because this is his system, his leadership, his responsibility. And if the RB22 cannot be understood, then the question becomes unavoidable. Not just about the car, but about the direction of the entire team. Because Formula One doesn't wait. It doesn't give time to figure things out slowly. It rewards clarity, precision, control. And right now, Red Bull has lost all three. So this is no longer just a story about a 1-second deficit. It's about a team that went from total dominance to total uncertainty in just a few races. And now faces the most important question of all. Not how fast the car is, but whether they still understand how to make it fast. Because if they don't, then this isn't just a temporary disaster. It's the moment everything started to fall apart.